Hello, everybody. I'm going live strategically. Don't worry if you're not seeing this live, but you're seeing it after. But yeah, I wanted to continue to test going live. So it is my first Taught the Tings for the new year. And you may be wondering, where have I been given all the things that happen in the news? So two things happened. One, I needed to calm down from all the things that happened in the news because I wanted to um not present from an emotional place when I talk about our main topic tonight. But I also started the new year kind of rough. A very, very close friend of mine, um, good friend and mentor, actually, when I was a younger person growing up in Jamaica. And he came to Canada years later. I'm here. We've had interactions and so on. He passed away on New Year's Day um, after a long illness. So that was not a great start to the new year. So I didn't want to go live then. Um, I tried to shake it off, and then right after that was the news about Venezuela. So I wanted to process. A lot of people have a lot of opinions, and I wanted to process what happened. I wanted to put it in context. If you know me, you know I love politics and I love history, and so I wanted the historical context for some of it. I wanted to just wrap my head around it properly. I didn't want to be another talking head because trust me, we all have an opinion on this. But I wanted to add value to the conversation, and that's what I hope to do with this show. Is to add some value to the conversation, give you something else to think about as we process this. But before we get into the main feature conversation, I wanted to wish you a happy new year. Wish you all the best for the new year. If you know me, you know I'm not really strong on what do you call it, the writing down all the resolutions. I am more of writing down my desires. I still try to do that. I haven't done it yet this year, but I believe in making a list of your desires, the things you really want, but not just the things you want. Think bigger, and that's the idea of the practice. I actually got this idea years ago when I quit a job. I was following a bunch of pundits, and one of them turned out to be Steve Harvey. And he suggested that you make a list of 300 things you want. And I'm like, there's no way there are 300 things I want. But it forces you to really like center what is it that you could want. So I offer that to you. I offer that to you, that instead of making resolutions, write down the things that you desire, and then at the end of the year you see if you got them, because I do believe writing is really a good part of the manifestation process if you believe in manifestation. So what am I going to be doing this year? One of the things I'm going to be doing is making that list. I'm going to try to stay positive this year. There's a lot of negativity going around, and Lord knows I consume a lot of it as a consumer of news. I literally like take in a lot of stuff and carry a lot of stuff. I'm trying to carry lighter this year. Also, I'm going to be saying more no's this year and adding value to my yeses. I want to say valuable yeses. When I say yes, I want them to be meaningful. I want them to add value to my life. I want them to be lucrative in terms of financially as well. So I'm going to be working on that. I'm also going to be working on not putting pressure on myself. That's why I haven't written the list yet. That's why I'm not doing this whole like resolution fiasco. No pressure. Just go through it. And I have to work on my health, especially in these hard times. I realize I can't run if trouble comes. So I need to figure that out. So I need to work on my weight and my health. There's some things going on when you get to a certain age, perimenopausal and so on. So I need to work on that. Another thing I want to offer to you as we go into this, as we continue to go into this new year, is that there's a school of thought that the new year doesn't really start until spring. If you notice, spring is where the blooms come up, the flowers, the whatevers, the buds, the new buds come out of the earth after a winter. So I want to offer that to you too. That if the first month, the first day, the first days don't seem so hot, don't seem so nice, don't worry, you have spring. So that's that. Now we're gonna get into the main topic. The main topic today, of course, is Venezuela, and in particular, Maduro being kidnapped. I know a lot of news outlets said he was captured. I take deference to that. Like, nobody can say they didn't know where he was. He was in the country. He wasn't running. So was it captured or was he kidnapped? So anyway, so um that's where we're gonna go with the conversation this evening. So yeah, that's where we're gonna go. So first things first, um you, me, everybody else, we have a feeling about what happened here. One Venezuelan minister said they just want our oil. And I think it's safe to say, and you will see further with clips that I'm going to play, that that's pretty much why they're there. It's essentially majority reason why this happened, why Maduro was taken out. Um, yes, he's indicted and, he's appeared in court in New York and all these things and their charges. The charges are hilarious, especially if you consider what has been happening in Venezuela so far or in and around Venezuela. Like, anybody remember the ships that were being bombed? Um, so it's very interesting that we don't mention fentanyl in his charges. Instead, his charges are cocaine, machine gun charges, and all kind of weird stuff. So. Mm, we know and we've heard from the horse's mouth himself, the one who's running the US, that it's about the oil. I know when they did their press conference right after the whole, taking him in and, flying him into the States and so on, the persons who spoke before the president tried to make it sound like we're just expediting a police order. We're really just arresting him for these charges. That's all this is, because they have to be very careful what they say there, and I'll talk about that further. They have to be very careful what they say there. And then he gets the mic, and you know how he is, not too smart, not too wise, loves to blow hard and wax crazy. And he goes, "It's the oil." So I think I don't think anybody can say it's not the oil. But what I wanted to put into context is that I want to put into context who is Maduro. I'm going to play a brief clip about him. And I want to put into context that damage was done in going in to get him. Apparently, over 100 aircrafts went in that early morning to get Maduro. So, and they did take out the electricity. They dropped bombs. So there's damage. I want to show you that. I want to show you that in context, Maduro was not a great guy. Like, anybody who tries to defend Maduro would be stupid. Like, we're not trying to defend Maduro. Like, everybody can say he's a despot. Everybody can say he's a dictator. Everybody can say he didn't have the best interests of his people at heart. But we can also say that if we believe in sovereignty of nations, that what happened there was actually wrong. It's, who cares if he's a dictator, to be honest, because we have a lot of other dictators that you guys are leaving willy-nilly. Nobody's going after Putin, nobody's going after Kim Jong-un. So what are we saying here? Dictatorship? Is that really what you cared about, America? Is that really what you cared about? I don't think so. As a matter of fact, um by and large, nobody was talking about the Venezuelans much until there were those deportation orders and those ships being blown up. The year prior, nobody had Venezuelans on their radar. So you don't fool me with the bleeding heart stuff. That, oh, the Venezuelans really needed him to go. Don't fool me with that. Yes, he should go, and his countrymen should figure out how to get him out. But let's not pretend that America is some moral authority here. But any case, so I want to show you um, underground damage, and of course, the diaspora of Venezuelans who are celebrating this capture.
cuando veo las ventanas dan hacia las montañas y veo las montañas llenas de fuego y escucho los helicópteros sobrevuelo, detonaciones.
Cuando el helicóptero iba bajando, nosotros tuvimos que accionar, porque si no, nos toman la unidad. Nosotros somos personas libres y vamos a hacer todo por defender a la patria.
Voy a decir la verdad, yo siento mucho miedo, mucho miedo, de todos lados. Yo siento miedo por mi vida, yo siento miedo por todo lo que pase, bueno o malo, yo siento miedo igual. No sé si puede ser los nervios, puede ser que el trauma, pues, puede ser eso, pero yo siento mucho miedo, de verdad.
Es grande y poderoso. Este es un sueño hecho realidad. De verdad que este es un sueño que todos los venezolanos soñábamos. Son ya 25, 28 años que llevamos con esta dictadura, con este señor que ya va por el tercer periodo. El 24...
demasiada emoción de que vamos a hacer un país libre como lo éramos anteriormente, que ya no vamos a tener tanta carencia, una calidad de vida humana mejor como la que se ha tenido después de este gobierno. Prácticamente vamos a estar libres, una Venezuela libre, gracias a Dios, gracias al gobierno norteamericano del presidente Donald Trump por ayudar y interceder en este país.
There you have it. There are Venezuelans, especially those outside of Venezuela, who are celebrating this capture, kidnapping of Maduro because he did run a dictatorship. And as you see, there are some people saying it's like 25 years of living under dictatorship and so on. So I just want to put that in context because I want to acknowledge that two things can be right at the same time. That people can be happy to see Maduro gone and that the US intervention is a bridge way too far. The other thing that, I want to talk about is right after this happened, Donald Trump and his people, I try not to use his name. I really don't like the man. I disdain him. They said that they're in charge of Venezuela. That's what they said. They said they're in charge of Venezuela now. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about under what authority or did they breach anything going into Venezuela in the way that they did. So the first question I have is, if you are in charge of Venezuela, why is it that the VP who was handpicked by Maduro himself is now in charge of the country? If you were doing regime change, wouldn't you have arranged for either the opposition to take over or your own proxy person? That's usually how you do regime change. So I'm not even sure if we can categorize this as regime change, even though that is the context in which we're trying to understand what is happening here. But I don't know, it's very interesting. So let's see this.
Vengo con dolor por el secuestro de dos héroes que tenemos de rehenes en los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica. El presidente Nicolás Maduro y la primera combatiente, primera dama de este país, Cilia Flores. Vengo con dolor, pero debo decir que vengo también con honor a jurar en nombre de todos los venezolanos y en nombre de todas las venezolanas, vengo a jurar por nuestro padre libertador Simón Bolívar.
Not only was VP Delcy Rodriguez sworn in as the person now in charge of Venezuela, not an American, not some proxy, not some opposition. Not only was she sworn in, but did you hear what she was saying in her swearing in ceremony? She's paying a lot of homage to Maduro. So what is happening here? Who's in charge? Who's actually in charge? What is happening here? What is the plan here? So is the plan to intimidate her? Is the plan to go in and kidnap her if she doesn't follow what you say? What is the actual plan here? The other thing I want to put in context is who is Maduro and who is the wife of Maduro, who is, arrested with him, charged with him, and may be equally guilty of all the things. So let's see.
Nicolas Maduro has ruled Venezuela since the death of his mentor and former president Hugo Chavez in 2013. Economic collapse and widespread shortages under his presidency have led millions to flee the country, many to other nations in Latin America or to the United States. He has become increasingly authoritarian in recent years, tightening his control on institutions like the judiciary, the electoral system, the military, but also cracking down on dissent. The last elections in 2024 were widely dismissed as neither free nor fair by international independent election observers. The US has not recognized Nicolas Maduro as the legitimate president of Venezuela since then. Nicolas Maduro, for his part, has always blamed the US's sanctions on Venezuela, in part for the economic collapse of the country. He also accuses the US of wanting to steal Venezuela's oil and its other vast natural resources. The US says that it has taken President Nicolas Maduro to the US to face charges of terrorism and drug trafficking, among other things, in the US legal system, leaving no one ultimately in charge of the country right now.
That's from BBC. And I want to play who is his wife and, how people perceive her.
Celia Flores is Venezuela's first lady. She is one of the most prominent women in Venezuelan politics and at times has held higher positions than her husband, President Nicolas Maduro. She was on the legal team of the late Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez, helping free him after a failed coup attempt in 1994. It was during that time she met Maduro. She later served as an attorney general and was the first woman to preside over the National Assembly. Her time in the assembly was controversial and was marked by restricting press access and accusations of nepotism. In July 2013, she married Nicolas Maduro and became the First Lady. The U.S. imposed sanctions on her in 2018 to target Maduro's inner circle. Flores has now been captured alongside her husband after U.S. strikes in the country. Both are in custody in New York, charged with weapon and drug offenses. Venezuela has declared a state of national emergency and denounces the military aggression.
So both deeply entrenched in the work of being dictators and leading with iron fists. So no, we're not crying for them. But we also want to talk about, was this legal? What happened here? Was it legal? I'll tell you something. A lot of illegalities have been happening leading up to this. I'm extremely still mad, still upset about what has happened with the fishing boats that were outside of Venezuela in the water and that were blown to smithereens by the US. Like the level of egregious action that's literally cold-blooded murder. Like, let's just say that these weren't fishermen, which there's no evidence to say they weren't. Let's just say they weren't. What is the charge for how do you handle somebody who's a drug dealer? How do you handle somebody who's a drug smuggler? Is the sentence death? Because if that's where we are, we're in a very dangerous and scary place as a people. If you think it was okay for them to kill more than 100 people, blowing them to smithereens in these small boats, if they were trying to carry fentanyl, I doubt those boats could manage what they're trying to do. So, and all the experts have said that Venezuela is not known for fentanyl. Venezuela is known for cocaine. So what exactly was that in aid of? And you know that in September, when they did one of the bombings, there were two very visible survivors of the boat attacks, and they ordered a secondary attack to kill them, to eliminate them. That borders on or is a war crime. So a lot of wrong has been happening leading up to this situation in taking out Maduro. So here's the other thing that I want to position for you. The UN Charter. The UN Charter primarily, through Article 2, prohibits threat or force against another state's territorial integrity or political independence, making invasions unlawful, except for self-defense. There is no argument that can be made for self-defense here. There isn't. So what they have been doing is trying to not use words like invasion, and attack, if you notice, because they know they're way out of pocket, extremely out of pocket for what they're doing. And so they are being stealthy now. I find the government authorities being very stealthy in terms of how they position these conversations right now, because they know that they are beyond the fray, beyond. So I'm going to show you the UN Charter. Let me see if I can size this right. The UN Charter, Article 2, particularly I wanted to look at the Section 4. Section 4 says the cornerstone article mandates that all UN members refrain in their international relations from the threat of or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. So this speaks to sovereignty. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's the most wickedest person on earth. Going in this way breaches the UN Charter, Article 2, 4. Right? That's the first thing to note. The other thing to note is that this action was taken separate from Congress. The US has a Congress, and the Congress has a role to play. I'm going to play for you something that the head of their Congress in the US said, and then we'll talk about the role of the Congress. This is Mike Johnson.
You said the United States is not occupying Venezuela. So how is the United States going to run Venezuela? Like the president said repeatedly, saying that the United States is in charge of Venezuela. And how much is this going to cost the United States taxpayers in terms of dollars and troops?
Look, some of these things were discussed in the SCIF. I want to say that the way that this is being described, I think, is accurate. This is not a regime change. This is a demand for change of behavior by a regime. The interim government is stood up now, and we are hopeful that they will be able to correct their action. They cannot participate with narco-terrorists and very dangerous international criminal organizations that harm and target Americans, frankly, and traffic all of these dangerous drugs into our country, that do all this great harm to our country. They cannot continue that activity. We have a way of persuasion, because their oil exports, as you know, have been ceased, and I think that will bring the country to a new governance in very short order. So we don't expect troops on the ground. We don't expect direct involvement in any other way beyond just coercing the interim government to get that going. Look, I expect that there will be an election called in Venezuela. I mean, some of these things are still being determined, of course, but it should happen in short order, and I think it will need to be so that their economy can remain stabilized and the country can remain stabilized.
I swear to you, these non-democratic people who hate democracy sick my actual stomach. So he's here saying, oh, it's not regime change, it's asking the regime to change. Fast and loose and fancy with the words, eh? Semantics heaven for them. Amazing. So here's the thing. The role of Congress is this. They have the sole power to formally declare war. So this is why the administration is not using certain terms, because they know that come November, if they lose Congress, they can all be pulled up for breach. So they're very slick with the wording. The Constitution grants the Congress the exclusive power to declare war. A formal declaration requires a simple majority vote in both the House and the Senate. And the U.S. has formally declared war on only 11 occasions. The last time was during World War II. Now, they have a little clause. There's a little clause that the administration has utilized. This clause is that since World War II, the U.S. has often engaged in military conflicts without a formal declaration of war. Instead, Congress has passed resolutions known as the Authorizations for use of military force, AUMF, which provides the president with statutory authority to use the military in specific situations. This was the workaround. There are timelines to this, because apparently, like, they have to do certain things within 30 days and 60 days before it becomes like full on breach. And when he had spoken to Congress about Venezuela was long before this kidnapping of Maduro. So there are some little questions there that maybe Maduro can even use in his trial to try to establish what is really going on here, and is this actually legal action that is being taken. So we have to understand things in their context. They went and did unilateral activity. Unilaterally, they're like, we're going to do this. We don't care if it is in the best interest of the country. We don't care about the amount of millions that it takes to fire up those choppers and aircrafts. We don't care about the downloading of these costs to the American public. And we don't care about the fallout globally for all of these things. In fact, what I really want to talk to you about is the what's next. Because right now we're establishing all the things. Was it legal? What actually happened? And so on. But the what's next is the part that perplexes me the most. Because if this is regime change, this is their zone. This is America's zone, eh? America loves a regime change. They always fumble it, always ruin people's lives behind it, never yet benefits the persons on the ground, never yet benefits the common person. But this is their zone. They do enjoy doing it. So this is some of the stuff that we're looking at, that is literally playing out before us. So let's talk about what's next. And I want to talk a little bit about America's track record with regime changes. And I want to play for you what these cretins are saying they plan to do next. But before we do that, I want to hear from the economist that I really, really appreciate, Mr. Sachs. Jeffrey Sachs. He has some interesting commentary online. You can go and follow up with him. I'm going to play this for you so you see who it is, and you can go and look for what he has to say, because he has years of experience with America and this bullshit.
I regard the United States as the most lawless and dangerous country in the world by far. You cannot believe how much misinformation we get every single day. Because I have advised more than 100 governments around the world, I have seen things with my own eyes. I've seen US CIA coups with my own eyes. Governments lie, but superpowers make super lies. And if you're running the largest war machine in the world, you are going to lie all the time. The entire Iraq war was not because they thought there were weapons of mass destruction. Weapons of mass destruction was the outcome of a focus group inside the Pentagon. How are we going to sell this war to the American people? Who made the decision 2 days ago that ATACMS can shoot deep inside Russia? Another brilliant move. We don't even know if the President of the United States is compos mentis right now. We have a deep state that takes these decisions, not a word of explanation to the American people. It's all lies. And I've seen it all through my life because I've been advisors to prime ministers and to presidents and to central bank governors and to some of the wonderful people on this panel. And I've seen a lot.
Jeffrey Sachs ain't never told a lie on this one. This one is literally the zone. This is their zone. Lies, lies, lies. Weapons of mass destruction that never happened. Now they were talking about fentanyl. Then all of a sudden they stopped talking about fentanyl. Now we look at Maduro's charges and it has cocaine. Right? And they can't even resist letting it be known that they're in there for the oil interest. But there's other stuff going on that I'll talk about in subsequent shows about, this sphere of influence and where this came from. I think it's very interesting. Actually, let me touch on it a little bit. So the clown in chief said, He's now calling it the Monroe Doctrine. And everybody's like, oh, that's so corny. But it's not just corny. He is renaming the Monroe Doctrine, and saying that that's kind of the power with which he is working to do these changes in Latin America and the Caribbean. I'm from the Caribbean, so these things are very personal to me. The political is personal, in case you didn't know. But let's talk about the Monroe Doctrine for a second, because this is where they get this sphere of influence. And if you have been keeping up with all the talking heads online, all the pundits online, they are referring to the sphere of influence again. As a matter of fact, they feel like China and Russia did not intervene and save Maduro because of this sphere of influence conversation being back on the table. People believe that this is what's happening. So here's what the Monroe Doctrine says: that the Monroe Doctrine was proclaimed by President James Monroe, a horrible president, 1823. It was a U.S. foreign policy that stated that European nations should not interfere in the affairs of the American continents, that is, the North and South Americas, which were no longer open to colonization. And in return, because a lot of people forget that part of the Monroe document, in return, the U.S. would not meddle in European affairs. It established separate spheres of influence for the Americas and Europe, asserting U.S. dominance in the Western Hemisphere and preventing further European colonialism, though it evolved to justify U.S. interventions later. So that's the essence of the Monroe Doctrine. And in context, it was originated when Latin American colonies were gaining their independence. And so there's a conversation here. Hey, we don't want them to be recolonized. We don't want them to be recolonized by Europe. So here comes Monroe's Doctrine. You stay over there, we stay over here. This is our sphere. But for years, America hasn't really claimed this Monroe Doctrine. But as you can see, this administration, especially with Mr. Burns, you know who I call Mr. Burns, Stephen Miller, they feel that they should go and dig up all the old laws, including ones that they have used against Venezuelans in America, the Alien Acts and so on, to do their handiwork, their dirty work. So just so you know, in context, when you hear him talking about the Monroe Doctrine, that's what he is talking about. So I want to let you hear now where they think the next moves are, because they're not done. This apparently is just the tip of the iceberg. Taking out Maduro out of Venezuela is just the tip of the iceberg. They have these plans. Some of it is in Project 2025. I wish people had read it. I wish people had listened when people told them to read it. But outside of that, they don't have a lot of detailed planning, because I tell you, I believe this man rules from chaos. Keeps throwing spaghetti, not just at the wall, but at us. So while you're wiping off some of the mess, he's throwing another piece of mess. So that's what I think. Look who showed up on Air Force One to lend their warmongering, dirty ways. This guy.
You just wait for Cuba. Cuba is a communist dictatorship that's killed priests and nuns. They've preyed on their own people. Their days are numbered. We're going to wake up one day, I hope in 26, in our backyard, we're going to have allies in these countries doing business with America, not narco-terrorist dictators killing Americans. This is a big frigging day. And everybody in the world is thinking differently than they were just a few days ago because of what you did.
Cuba is ready to fall.
Yes.
Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know if they're going to hold out. But Cuba now has no income. They got all of their income from Venezuela, from the Venezuelan oil. They're not getting any of it. And Cuba literally is ready to fall. And you have a lot of great Cuban Americans that are going to be very happy about this.
Do you see these guys laughing like Cheshire cats? Cuba is next. Cuba's going to fall. Cuba's going to fall. Lindsey Graham come from under a rock, for this moment like this. He's about to shine now, because this is he salivates on this shit. right? I wish they would listen to like some Gen Zs. Like, don't listen to me because I'm an X. And Gen Xers, we've seen like all the things. We cross all the generations. I wish I would listen to some Gen Z. Gen Zs have no interest in this warmongering bullshit that they're doing. This theft of resources that they're pawning off as regime changes. So listen to them again.
We're going to be more prosperous because of the business deals. And there are going to be Americans alive today because he shut down a narco-terrorist state called Venezuela. This is a good thing, not a bad thing.
And the oil companies are going to go in and rebuild their system. They're going to spend billions of dollars, and they're going to take the oil out of the ground, and we're taking back what they stole. Remember, they stole our property. It was the greatest theft in the history of America. Nobody has ever stolen our property like they have. They took our oil away from us. They took the infrastructure away. And all that infrastructure is rotted.
I sometimes I don't even have words to speak after he speaks, because it's so infuriating. You hear him? They're over there, oh, the narco terrorists sending, and he just goes straight to it. The oil. We're gonna go in the oil. We're gonna take out the oil out of the ground. We're gonna take out the oil. This mofo. Always trying to line him and his friends' pockets. We're gonna go in and we're gonna fix the infrastructure. Nobody told you the infrastructure was broken. Right? I have a whole show on Venezuela, Chavez's take, what really happened. Because if you notice, Chitolini keeps saying they took the oil from us. They took our oil from us. It's not your oil. It's not in America's ground. It's in Venezuela's ground. They have the world's largest reserves of oil. Largest. They're number one on the list. I've shown you this before. Right? It's not your oil to take. I don't understand this neo imperialism BS where innocent lives are being lost so that you and your friends can laugh like Cheshire cats and grin about how you're going to make some big money now at the expense of poor people. Here we are again. Right? So you heard Graham say Cuba. And we've been hearing them say other things like Greenland. And we've been hearing them say Colombia. So they're naming for us. And anybody who's in these countries and not paying attention would be stupid to not pay attention, because the good and bad thing about these people is they can't shut up because they're not actually professionals, right? So they can't shut up. So this is where we're going next. This is where we have our eyes set on Cuba. When asked if he's going to take similar action in Cuba, he said he doesn't think he needs to because he thinks Cuba will crumble on its own. Interesting. I can tell them about Cuba because America has a history of dabbling in the Caribbean and Latin America for years. In fact, let me bring up an image for this as I speak to them and their regime changes and all this stuff. Let me see what this is. I think some of these images did not save, so I'm gonna have to use this one. So this one shows you U.S. intervention since World War II. Do you see how many interventions they've had? And in the mix, there was Panama, there was Cuba, there's all these places. Let me talk about Cuba a little bit, because it's the Caribbean, 90 miles from Jamaica, where I'm from. The Bay of Pigs invasion was a failed 1961 CIA-backed attempt by U.S.-trained Cuban exiles to overthrow Fidel Castro's communist government in Cuba. This resulted in a humiliating defeat, capture of the invaders, and strengthening of Castro's ties with the Soviet Union. So somebody is failing. Not only do they fail while they're doing it, but they fail after they leave some of these countries in entire mess. Right? Sometimes when people make comments on these things, you guys are so dumb. Anyway, So I'm continuing. So, we talk about that. So there was a resulting humiliation, right? And the other thing that happened, the Cuban Missile Crisis, was a tense 13-day standoff in October 1962 between the US and the Soviet Union, triggered by the discovery of Soviet nuclear missile sites in Cuba, bringing the world to the brink of a nuclear war. This is not new. Like they've always been doing this. Here's another one that they dabbled in. They dabbled in Jamaica, where I'm from. The CIA had significant covert presence in Jamaica, particularly in the 1970s and 80s, aiming to counter Soviet and Cuban influence by supporting anti-government forces, destabilizing Michael Manley's socialist government, the PNP, and potentially arming political gangs like the Shower Posse. This was to influence election outcomes, leading to accusations of involvement in political violence and assassination plots through the US officially, though the US officially says they didn't do anything. This is them dabbling. You can read the list for yourself. How many places they have intervened. Right? And this is, I tell people, this is their bread and butter. This is actually their bread and butter. What can we go in and steal? What resources can we go in and take? And or what does this country mean for positioning? Because sometimes they invade so that they can invade somewhere else. Right? But this list, and this is not an exhaustive list, by the way, but this shows like attempted regime change and bomb attacks in particular. Because there are other ways that they do this dabbling in the world. Like, it's so funny because Chitolini says he was going to run on, he was running on not being the world's police anymore. And here we are, kidnapping people and so on. So there's that. Another one I want to play for you is a brief summary of one of their other regime change attempts. This one was Iran.
While Trump's record of attacks is stark, it's also in line with American history. After all, this is what US presidents do. Regime change. They've been in this business for a long, long time. Ask Iran. They got a taste of it way back in 1953. Their prime minister was Mohammad Mossadegh. He was a democratically elected leader, but the Americans got rid of him. Do you know why? Because he wanted Iran to benefit from its oil wealth. You see, until the 1950s, the West controlled Iran's oil, the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. It was a British firm, and they got a bulk of the oil money. Tehran only got a limited share. Mossadegh wanted to change that. He had the support of the parliament and the people. He tried to nationalize Iran's oil fields. Britain, of course, did not like it, so they appealed to the Americans for help. And guess what the US did? They launched what was called Operation Ajax. The CIA laid the groundwork for a coup. The first attempt failed, but in 1953, the second attempt succeeded. Mossadegh was removed. The US installed a pro-Western monarchy. It was under Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi.
And anybody who knows anything about this country, and I think actually Iran is a very good parallel to use when talking about what happened in Venezuela, because it's about oil, right? Very good parallel to use. And anybody who knows how that ended up, you see what happened with that regime change. You see the impact in Iran. And the conflict with Iran doesn't end. Right? So these things aren't even permanent. They're not even semi-permanent fixes, right? They are means to an end. In this case, access to oil. However, I must say I'm really concerned that they did not have a really well executed plan for Venezuela, because it is bizarre to me that they have not put in their own person. So it's not regime change. But you bomb the place, but it's not war. You want the oil, but you haven't figured out how to stop like the BRICS ships from coming in. There's so much going on. that I'm not so sure they had this all planned out properly. The other places you can look at, Iraq was regime change, and they went in under the premise of weapons of mass destruction being present. There were none. They took out Saddam Hussein, and anybody who knows what's going on in Iraq knows that it is a disaster. Again, the people on the ground never benefit, and that was 91. Right? Afghanistan. Oh, this was big pie in the face, egg in the face, all the face. The US failure in Afghanistan culminated with a 2021 Taliban takeover. The premise of going into Afghanistan was to get rid of the Taliban. You know? And in 2021, guess who's in charge? Since 2021, the same Taliban. This is a word of caution to any of you who think that regime change is the thing. To any of you who think that this is some solution. This is the thing in the global landscape to do. I can tell you it isn't. And I can tell you that there are multiple evidential things that you can look at. The internet is free, folks, for use. You can do your own research. You don't have to take my word for it. But there are multiple ways that you can see that this path does not end well. Doesn't end well, definitely for the people of Venezuela. Like what are you going to do with all the Venezuelans that you have been kicking out of America, and now you're creating additional crisis in their country? Crisis, when you create crisis in the countries that you're in, they end up forming refugee crisis. So what are we doing here? What is this cyclical madness that America is engaging in? And I'm like really frustrated by Americans who, it was bad enough you gave us this administration to cause havoc across the globe, but you have not been able to stop it. You have not been able to even halt the crazy. And you give these guys run of the media to speak all manner of falsehoods. And I see MAGA thinking this is strongman politics. Yes, go get them. You think this is gonna benefit you? Who do you think this benefits? If they do get access to the oil, because the jury is out on whether or not they're really gonna get access, and I'll show you why I say that. If you think that's really gonna happen, how does it work out in the end? Right? Because I hear you saying Greenland, and Greenland, they say, is 3 times the size of Texas. So you're gonna keep adding chaos, right? So we're gonna go after Greenland now. Just so you know, Greenland is strategically located, has resources that could benefit the US. It lies along the shortest route from Europe to North America. In case you were wondering why Greenland continues to be in the conversation, right? It is vital for US ballistic missile warning systems. In addition, Greenland has some stuff. They boast minerals, oil, natural gas. So the positioning of Greenland, here we go again. More resource theft and more positioning, more strategic positioning to tackle Europe. But I thought you guys said sphere of influence. Very interesting how these things are just happening. They're just saying it out loud. Nobody is stalling or stopping or halting. Very interesting. So here's the last clip I want to play on this topic. This video surfaced yesterday. So you see that? BRICS ships bypassing whatever America's blockade is, because ever since they took out Maduro, they said there's a blockade. You can't get any oil unless you go through them. Well, BRICS ships got in. So the word on the street is either there is actually no physical way to stop these arrangements that were pre-made under Maduro, or You're afraid to really cause that kind of havoc in the sea. So the BRICS ships got in. And if you'd want to know what BRICS is, it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And the rumor was that Maduro was angling to see if he could join up with the BRICS because, again, Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. Right? And folks, I want you to connect dots because there was an attack on Christmas Day in Nigeria, which I spoke of in my year in review. Don't think any of these words that they're throwing out are isolated. Don't think they're isolated. There is a connection between all of these things. Of course, follow the money. Of course, follow the oil. Nigeria is number 10 on the list of countries with oil reserves, with the most oil reserves. Number 10. So he's in the top 10. Nigeria's in the top 10, and Venezuela is number 1. So don't think that these things are happening in isolation or just accidentally. Don't for 1 second fall for this notion that somehow this administration cares about Christians. The same man who turns the Bible upside down when he did, his little staged thing, doesn't even know how to spell Christ. Don't think they now care about Black Nigerian Christians. The same man who's been cutting out DEI, who's been removing war memorials that are to Black, soldiers who served. Don't think there's any altruistic action here. Don't think they care about the Venezuelan people on the ground. Every time he's spoken since January 3rd has been, we're going for the oil, we're going to take out the oil, there's wealth in the ground, we're going for the wealth. It's literally, he's telling you what he wants from Venezuela. There will be a glitch. I want to discuss this in another show to come because I'm mindful of the time and I don't want to keep you long. But there is a potential glitch here. I sit in Canada, and Canada has been a source. Canada is also in the top 10 of reserves, and Canada has been a source for multiple of these top companies. So the query is being, the query that's being asked is, do you think everybody's just going to run over now, leave all their interests everywhere else around the world that they have invested millions, sometimes billions of dollars in to extract oil, and run on over now to Venezuela today? Or do you think that this will have to be a staggered thing that happens? So many things to consider here. In any case, as I wrap up on this thing, I just want to point out that I hope Americans, voters in particular, are taking note of all the breaches that are happening right now leading into November. Because he has the Supreme Court in his back pocket. Congress has decided to sit on its hand and be derelict in its duties to stop, halt, or question anything. The UN has, almost no teeth. They're meeting, I think they met either yesterday or today to have an emergency meeting to talk about this. Everybody's just talking. As for the Caribbean, the CARICOM has been silent, sitting on their hands, saying they're monitoring. So at some point, we need to empower the people to act against these things. These things are not in the interest of the people in Venezuela, and they're not in the interest of the American people, and they're definitely not in the interest of the rest of us in the world. But I am an observer, a commentator, and I like to put historical context to these things. And so I offer to you that some of the things that I spoke about today, you can do further investigation. You can look up, for example, how these failed regime changes go. Just look up the outcome. I've given you, multiple good examples today. Just look at the outcome. Look what happens after America. Right? You would think that we would have advanced beyond this mess. But apparently we haven't. So I hope that all the words that they're saying don't show up as these escalated activities. But I do believe when they say they're going after Greenland, they're going after Colombia. I hear him saying he's going after Mexico and he's going after Cuba. I would not ignore that. I would not ignore that. I think they're doing everything before November that they can. Every breach they can breach, every semantic play they can play, every game they can play, they're going to do before November because they do know that in November there may be some reckoning at the polls. In fact, yesterday, he was speaking to the media and he says, I think we should cancel the elections. And then he's like, well, we can't cancel the elections because they're going to say I want to be a dictator, but I just think the elections should be canceled. Under what grounds? On what basis should the November elections be canceled, sir? Imagine. But because there has been multiple seats toppling leading up to this, so there is an indication that people are waking up. Some people woke up with the Epstein files. Some of the MAGA were like, this is what he ran on. He was going to give us the files. Now the files, it's a game. It's a game of hide and go seek, redaction. It's a joke. We're done with him. Other people are realizing that one of the major promises he made was that he would bring down the grocery prices. On day one, he said. It's now been a year. Where is it? Where are these things that actually impact your day-to-day life? Instead, he's pursuing these other ventures, ensuring that arms and aircraft and oil money makers continue to make money. He's already built in a tax break for the richest of the rich in America. So at some point, you guys have to wake up and go to the polls and get back some semblance of order in America. If not for your sake, for our sake, we beg. Please, we beg. You cannot hope to continue doing this. Anyway, that's it for me on Venezuela for this show. I'm going to talk about it, of course, continually because it's a never-ending topic. To be honest, it's actually just unfolding. I wanted to leave you on a lighter note. You know that this show is culture, politics, and arts. And in terms of the arts, I wanted to leave you with, some artists from a genre that I love. The genre is reggae. It's reggae and dancehall, really. And I wanted you to look at some people that I've identified to watch. There are some people to watch. One of those persons is Spice. She's about to release new music on Friday. It looks like she's leaning into some new styling. So I think Spice is always somebody to watch, actually. I've mentioned before that she has done significant work post-hurricane in Jamaica, post the Category 5 disaster. She has been very active in trying to render help to those who are, in essence, homeless in Jamaica because of the storm. And so I will always big up all the work that she's doing in her art. And so look out for her this year. I think she's going to be a person to watch this year as she puts out new content and as she continues to build her brand. Shensia, I think, is always somebody to watch. She just performed in Kigali in Rwanda. And she was also in Nigeria. I think this is going to be a year where we see more of her, more from her. So definitely somebody to watch. There's a young artist named Asian. It's spelled A-T-N, but it's Asian. He has a very unique style. His songs are a mess, like lyrically messy. Like if you're a grown person, you're gonna be like side-eyeing me about this recommendation, but I'm telling you, he's somebody to watch. His music is fun and catchy, and his style is very unique. And I think that he will continue to make waves in 2026. Another person that you should watch is Massacre. I think coming off his stint with Tommy Lee Sparta, they had a bit of a verbal, lyrical feud. At some point it became more than a feud. It became him staking his claim. He's going for the throne. So he's going after the Vibes Cartel. And so I think you should watch him. I also think you should watch out for Chronix, because last year he released Exile, and two of the songs, particularly from Exile, Resilient and Hurricane, became the songs of 2025 towards the end there, especially after the hurricane struck. And he hasn't toured the album yet. He performed only once last year, And so I think we're going to see him tour the album. I think you're going to hear more from him. And I actually think his messaging is timely. And so he's somebody to watch. And I think Skipper Dunn in dancehall is also somebody to watch. So those are the things that I wanted to leave you with on a lighter note. As I said, Happy New Year. We hope to do this weekly. Just know that I have not yet set a day that you can tune into me. So you will always have to watch these back or catch me when I go live, because I'm going to try to do more lives of it as I get more comfortable with the style that I want to use to convey the messages on Taught the Things. Taught the Things is going to be in, an interesting space that I hope we build together, where we're going to do features. I love politics, so there's always going to be politics. I love culture and I love the arts. I'm going to feature artists. I'm going to feature topics. I want to talk about grief. I think grief is underexplored or under discussed, and I want to have a feature on that, and I'm going to pick themes like that throughout the year. But yeah, we're going to be weekly, and we'll see how this continues to grow. Thank you for tuning in, and let me know what you think when you see these reposts. Let me know what you think about these topics. I think as it relates to Venezuela, I think we're all right. We're all right this time. It's about the oil. But there's more going on there. So feel free to engage with me. I will look at comments and comment back. But anyway, you take care and have a good one. See you soon.